You're listening to The Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
We waste no time with our next guest. He's one of the best hockey minds out there. He's the host of the ESPN hockey podcast, Game Misconduct, the co-host of the Michael Kay Show on ESPN Radio 98.7 in New York City, and the backup Rangers play-by-play announcer. He's one of my favorite broadcasters. He is Don LaGreca, and he joins us right now on our progressive guest line. Don, appreciate the time, my friend. Thanks so much for coming on.
Good. I miss you, man. I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a bit. It's certainly been a bit. I had to start, of course, with the Islanders because it is so nice as a diehard Islanders fan growing up on Long Island my whole life to have this team back winning, have this team have a legit chance to win. For you covering the game of hockey, is it nice having a local team that has a legitimate chance to win a title?
It's funny because, I grew up a Devil fan, and obviously I had to change my allegiance when I became the Ranger announcer. And then people's like, well, who do you root for? And I was like, I root for all three. The main reason for that is because I want one of, if not all the teams to be good, because they'll have more of a chance to talk at hockey, right? Unfortunately on the Michael Kay Show, we're not going to be, breaking down, what's happening outside the New York metropolitan area. So to have a team good, especially this fan base, because when the station started back in 2001, we had the rights to the Islanders then. And that's when they went through their the playoff races with that 7-game series against Toronto, and then they followed up with Tampa and Ottawa. And I was at the Coliseum all the time and covering them and doing shows from the Champion Sports Club at the Marriott across the parking lot. So I've always had a warm place in my heart for these Islanders and this fan base, and I couldn't be more happy for them.
Let's go back to Game 4. What is the significance, historically speaking, of that Ryan Pulock play? I mean, what can you really compare it to, maybe in the history of New York sports in the playoffs?
It's a great it's a great point because I've been thinking about it myself. Now, the first things that jump into your mind is the David Tyree catch, but obviously that was in a Super Bowl, and right there the championship was going to be won. But I think it's more along the lines of the Derek Jeter flip play, right? A little earlier in the playoffs, and certainly there was it wasn't like the game-winning play specifically like that in the final second of the game. It wasn't like the last out of a championship, but I think it's got that kind of significance, an unusual play that if not done, it probably costs you the game. And then you look at the series completely different, if that game goes into overtime and then who knows what happens. And also, if that goes in, think of the significance of that goal. I mean, that's one of the greatest goals that you've ever seen. I mean, Ryan McDonough, who's a really great defenseman, but certainly not known to be Bobby Orr, doing a spinorama in the final 5 seconds to tie a playoff game. And if Tampa went on to win that game, win the series, and eventually repeat as Stanley Cup champions, that would go down as one of the great goals ever scored. So certainly the fact that it was stopped by Pulock makes it one of the better plays you're ever going to see in the playoffs. And if the Islanders win a cup, I think that would probably be the cover of the DVD, if not a whole chapter in the book.
Do you think it could be one of those moments? I mean, you said it. They got to now win the cup. But it always seems like if you're going to win a championship in any sport, you need to have that moment. You got to overcome that adversity and find a way to get it done. Could that potentially be now the moment for this Islanders team?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. Real, honestly, just there's a lot of moments. It's not like a Super Bowl. It's not even like a World Series, where you're talking about 4 rounds. You're talking about the best of 7s. And the scary thing about this run is that there's still so much more to come. I mean, you've got this series left, and if they're fortunate enough to win another potential 7-game series against Montreal or Vegas, so we're not near done yet. So there's other things that could happen, but to think that something that significant, that memorable, can happen again seems a little bit of a reach. So. Yeah, this is going to, if they win, this is going to go down as one of the great moments. And if they don't win the series, then it's the Andy Chavez catch, right? It's a great moment. It's the grand single by Robin Ventura. It's a great moment that kind of gets lost just because it didn't end up being a championship or a series win.
Don LaGreca with us here talking all things Islanders Lightning Game 5 tonight. So Don, what do the Islanders have to do? They've kind of followed the same script in Pittsburgh, down 2-1, win the next 3, including a road Game 5. Same thing against the Bruins. What's the script for the Islanders tonight if they're going to win?
Well, I hate to simplify it, but boy, to get a little bit more offense would be great, right? And they got the 3 goals in game 4, but they needed every bit of them, right? And not scoring again in the third period had your heart in your throat for most of that period, at least for the final 15 minutes, how Tampa was able to jump. Tampa's such a good team. Here's the analogy that I use, and I use it sometimes with the Rangers, because when the Rangers were good, they weren't a flamboyant offensive team either. Is that, to use a football analogy, it's like when the Islanders are scoring, they're like long, sustained drives, right? But the Lightning, they can throw a 70-yard touchdown pass like in a blink of an eye, right? They don't need a lot of zone time. They don't need a lot of like establishing momentum. They've got so many gifted players that in a blink of an eye, you think you got them under control, like in game 4, and 3-0 becomes 3-2, and you're like, what's going on here? So sometimes the best defense is a good offense. I'd like to see this team generate a little bit more offense. Stay on top of Vasilevsky, who has, had his moments in this series. Certainly you go back to early in the series, a tough goal that he gave up in game 1 that ended up being the game-winning goal from Pulock. So just stay on top of him, get more offense, take advantage of power play opportunities, and just try to be one more better than Tampa. I know they're a great defensive team, Jake, but a little bit more offense would certainly help the cause for sure.
One thing we saw from Barry Trotz in that game 4 is that he moved the lines a little bit. He put Kyle Palmieri, with Barzell for a couple shifts there, and it led to a goal. Do we see more of that tonight? Is that something the Islanders could do to maybe try and generate some more offense?
Oh yeah, that's what everybody does, right? You're seeing Vegas do it last night. You're juggling things. You got to. You have to try to find ways. Now, the lucky thing for them is they're not really reliant on one line. They can roll 4 lines. Look at the production they're getting out of that 4th line with Matt Martin scoring a goal on Saturday. So you don't want to break those guys up because they've been just so good. But I think there's interchangeable pieces. He knows what he's doing. There's nothing wrong with kind of jiggling things around if he thinks that you can get the right combination, because watching these games, the insurance goals are going to just be so important. I know they've been able to hold on in game 1 with a 1-goal win, and obviously game 4. But just getting those insurance goals, staying on top of them, possessing the puck in the offensive zone, whatever combinations can work. I think you've got enough flexibility there, certainly to make that happen. Palmieri's played on a bunch of different lines every place he's ever been. He's always shown the ability to play wherever you ask him to play, and I would think he would definitely utilize that as a strategy if he thinks he's coming up a goal short.
Don LaGreca with us here, co-host of the Michael Kay Show on ESPN Radio in New York, the Rangers radio play-by-play announcer and the host of Game Misconduct in ESPN Hockey Podcast. Don, as far as the other series out west, Vegas and Montreal, Vegas, they did what they had to do last night, right? They win in overtime, series tied at 2-2. Did they maybe save their season with that win in overtime?
You never know, because we've seen teams come back from 3-1 down, and that's a very good Vegas team. But you just wonder psychologically the damage that would have been done had they lost that game last night with the controversial decision of putting Leonard in. Because, listen, Fleury's been amazing. I think he's been their MVP. I think if Vegas won the Cup with Fleury, that he would be their Conn Smythe Trophy winner. Obviously, Pietrangelo might have changed that over the last couple of games, but still, to make that kind of a decision, if it doesn't work, now who do you start? Now you go back to Fleury, and is he psychologically damaged after the way he coughed up the puck in game 3? It would have just put Vegas in a really tough spot to turn around and win 3 in a row. So, yeah, I think it saved their season for sure, and their Cup run, because they very easily could win one. And the games were almost identical to each other. The way, Vegas completely outplayed Montreal in game 3, and yet, Montreal got the goal and got the win in overtime. And then the reverse happened. Montreal really controlled that game, and then it's Vegas that pulls one out. So I think there's a classic series. I don't think it's over by any stretch. But can you just imagine the conversation in Vegas and around the National Hockey League had they lost that game because of the decision to not play Fleury by Pete DeBoer? And he looks like a genius now. We'd be killing him if they ended up losing that game.
Spot on. All right, Don. So I had to get to something that you talked about on your show on Friday. So Michael Kay, your longtime co-host, of course, on the Michael Kay Show, came on our show last week, and I asked him the foxhole question that he asked every guest on center stage, right? Who would he have in his who would you have in your foxhole to help you get out if you could only pick one person? Now, he said his wife Jody, and I knew when he said that you were going to be all over him on your show, which you did. So I want to give you the opportunity here on our show to respond why Michael Kay was wrong you say he'd pick his wife in that Fox host scenario?
Because it's your wife, right? Like that just comes with the territory. It's a written contract that you're supposed to be there. They're the vows at the marriage, right? So, to honor and obey and all, and I know they're all outdated phrases, but the whole idea is you're under a contract that you're going to be there for one another. A foxhole to me is a guy that, could run, but he doesn't. And not because it's some kind of contract, not some kind of promise that you made to each other, just because that's the way it is. That's why your wife can't be your best friend, because again, it's in the contract. It's in the agreement in the marriage. But when two people are best friends, or they happen to be in that same foxhole together, they're there because of circumstances. And there's no written contract to say they got to, stick around or go. So that's why you can't use your wife as your best friend. You can't use your wife in the foxhole because there's an understanding that you're going to be there for one another. So you got to pick somebody. It's just lame. It makes no sense. It's almost like she's going to fly away. You're married to her. Like he says these things like he's afraid she's going to just all of a sudden realize that it's a mismatch and she's going to disappear.
He kind of threw you under the bus by not saying you. I mean, you guys have been doing the show together since 1947. I'm like, how does he not say Don LaGreca?
I'm not going to say I'm not hurt by it. You work with somebody for 20 years. And again, now you could say there's a contract that I'm supposed to be there. So I guess the same kind of rules apply a little bit, but we've been there for each other well beyond whatever our contract states us to be. And listen, he'd be one of the guys in the foxhole for me. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for him. I was just his update guy, and he allowed me to grow into a co-host. That doesn't happen with a lot of people. A lot of people's ego wouldn't allow it to happen. So I would definitely consider him. But the fact that he considers his wife without even thinking, what about DiPietro? All he does is talk on the show about how he loves DiPietro, how they're so close, they're such good friends. How does he not say Rick DiPietro?
You make a salient point there. All right, so then finally Don, if Michael's not in your foxhole, then who are you taking to be in your foxhole? Is it the great Dan Grassa? Is it Greg Buttle? I mean, where are we going with the foxhole?
Those are the three candidates, right? I mean, Michael, for everything he's done for my career. Buttle has been like a father figure to me. I mean, I lost my dad when I was in my late 20s, and then I started working with Greg shortly after that, and he's been such a mentor to me from a football standpoint. Always there for me. Always comes to my Chasso softball charity event. Grassa, I've known him for going on 20 years. I'm close to him. I'm very fortunate. I got a lot of people that I can choose from. But notice I'm not mentioning my wife, Nancy, who I love and adore and I've known forever, but I'm not mentioning her as one of the people. But it would probably be down to those three. And if I'd probably go with Greg because, you throw the foxhole analogy out there, and that's assuming that there's got a lot of heavy lifting ahead, right? And I don't know if Michael or Dan can handle the heavy lifting the way Greg could. So I would say because of how close I am to him and just how effective he would be in the foxhole, I think I'd go with Buttle.
Don, you're the absolute best. Thanks so much for getting up early. I know you normally sleep till noon, but maybe not anymore with the Twins. But I appreciate you making time.
No. This is late in the day for me now. Anytime for you, man. Thanks. This is fun.
There you go. Don LaGreca, the co-host of the Michael K. Show on ESPN Radio in New York with us, backup Rangers play-by-play announcer. And if you're a hockey fan, Game Misconduct, ESPN's hockey podcast, definitely listen to it. Good stuff there with Don LaGreca on our progressive guest line. We'll take a quick break, wrap up our show for a Monday. This is the Jake Asman Show right here on Sports Map Radio.
The Dave Smith Show.
If you remove AD from this Laker roster, Steve, the